All right, great. Thank you once again for the opportunity to do this. My name is Gareth Dyke, and this presentation is Writing and Editing Abstracts in English. Apologies for the start. We will now get going, and we will hopefully have some fun, and I hope that you will learn something from this presentation. I hope that that you will gain something. My name is Gareth Dyke. I worked for a number of years at a range of different universities in Ireland. So if you listen to my English, sounds a little bit is in Dublin. I then worked in Southampton in the UK and in Hungary, where I live now with my family. I've published myself lots and lots of academic articles, more than 270 academic papers in my career. And I also work as an editor, working for a number of publishing companies, editing and working on authors' manuscripts every day. So I hope that both from the publishing perspective as well as from the writing perspective, I can help you with some hints and tips and tricks in this presentation. You can find out more information about me if you're interested on these sites here linked on this slide. We will give you copies of this presentation, videos that you can watch back in the future. So I hope it will be useful. Here's what we're going to talk about today in our presentation for you this afternoon. 4 things: the structure of an effective English abstract, how to write the opening sentences of an English abstract. We're going to talk through some worked examples of English abstracts so that you can see how to do it, how some of the tricks and tips in English writing work. And then we're going to finish with some general comments, some general ideas about English writing, how you can do this, how you can be effective in your writing. So these are the things that we're going to talk about in our presentation today. Let's get started then with the structure of an effective English abstract. And here's Winston Churchill, former British Prime Minister, very famous English writer. He famously was said to have been able to do mobilization of the English language in order to send it into battle. That's what Kennedy, the famous US president at the time of the Second World War, said about Winston Churchill. We will help you. I will show you how to use and edit English so that you can communicate your message and be as effective as possible in your English writing. And this is what we're talking about. This is what we're aiming for as editors and as researchers, academic articles, academic research articles. And this slide summarizes the general structure of a full research article. 2 sections, 2 main sections to an academic article: the title and the abstract. That's the first section. And then the rest of the paper, which we're not going to talk about in our presentation today, but 2 sections: the title and the abstract and the main text. You should put, editors should put, authors should put time and energy into the title and into the abstract as into the rest of the paper, because often, the title and the abstract are all that people read of academic papers. You know this yourself from your own reading, from your own academic work. Having an effective title for your academic paper and having an effective abstract is key, because this is what's going to capture the attention of readers. This is what's going to keep people interested. This is what we are going to be talking about in our presentation today, in order to help you be as effective as possible as editors. The abstract in particular is absolutely critical for effective communication and to get people interested in reading your articles. We know that in academic writing, the structure is the most important aspect. Readers need to know throughout an article where they've come from, where they are going, and where they are now. So just like as in a movie or reading a book, a detective story, a plot is needed. Structure is all important, and each of the different sections of an academic article have a different structure, basically speaking, and we can show you, we can teach you how to write and edit the different sections of academic articles using structure. Structure is one of the most important initial things to know about when editing, when writing academic papers. So let's get started talking about abstracts, editing abstracts, writing abstracts in English. What is an effective abstract for an academic paper? Well, a good quality abstract, of course, has to stand alone. It's got to be honest and precise. It's got to contain all of the relevant information in the article, in the research article, so that somebody else reading the paper can gain all of the relevant information. So simple, honest and precise has to stand alone in search engines because, of course, as we've already mentioned, this is often all people read of academic articles. No technical jargon, short and specific. And remember, as an author and as an editor as well, the quality of your abstract will inform an editor's decision. Often, this is the thing that editors edit first. This is the part of an academic paper that editors read first, and it's what will determine the future success of the article. How many people are going to read it? How many people are going to see it? How many people are going to cite it? The quality of an abstract in English will inform that editor's decision. So I find, and I'm sure you find as well, that many authors write their abstracts in a rush, afterthought, almost at the end of the process. And of course, this has to be a concise, standalone piece of writing with a very clear message that accurately reflects the full text of the entire article. So many people have difficulty writing these pieces of academic text, 150 words or 200 words or 250 words. I find, and I'm going to show you, that if you have difficulty writing and editing an abstract in English, you can do it easily if you follow the 4-question technique, it's called. And here on the bottom of this slide, and we'll see it again in a minute, you can see the 4 questions that an abstract has to answer. An academic article abstract must answer these 4 questions in sequence in the abstract. That's the structure of the abstract. We talked on the previous slide about how important structure is in academic writing. So I teach people in academic writing workshops, if you struggle to write an academic abstract, answer these 4 questions in sequence and then delete the questions. You will end up with about 100 or 150 words of text that you can then edit into your academic abstract. Why did you do the study? What did you do? What did you find? And what did you conclude? Those 4 questions answered in sequence. Why did you do it? What did you do? What did you find? And what did you conclude? Few sentences for each of those questions gives you the structure of a well-written, well-edited academic paper. And then you can just delete the questions. We do this in writing workshops. The 4-question technique gives you the structure that editors, that readers, that other researchers want to find in an academic abstract in order to get all of the information they need out of the structure. So a structured abstract can help you to organize your ideas when you write these kinds of articles. And many journals, as you know, ask for this anyway. Many journals ask for structure in their abstract. Here's an example from Biological Sciences: a background, methodology, principal findings, conclusions, and significance. I'm advocating that if you have the structure in place, using the 4 why questions that we've talked about on the previous slide, you will find it much easier to edit and work on the writing of effective abstracts in English. Structure is key to success in academic writing. We know this from medical writing in particular, where of course abstracts often have a slightly different structure: the object, the method, the result, and the conclusion. So starting to write, starting to edit, your tricks for success and accessibility are here. The original nature. Is the study new and interesting? How does your work relate to a current hot topic? And having that structure is so important. It's key to being an editor and as a writer when putting abstracts together. So here's an example. For example, the primary prevention of cardiovascular disease with a Mediterranean diet. And you can see here a background, methods, results, and conclusion for these different sections of the academic paper. This is the structure. These are the 4 why questions that we've talked about previously on our slide before. You know, this is the structure that we can put into the article in order to help you with the writing, to help you with the editing. So we talk to medical writers, we talk to editors all of the time. And one of the ways to be effective in writing and putting together an abstract for an academic article is initially to think about what the message of the work is. What is the take-home message of your work? What is the one thing that you want people to get out of the work? And if you know this before you start to write, it becomes much, much easier to put the abstract together. So we encourage authors, academic authors, before they start an abstract or an academic paper, message. What's the take-home message? What is the one thing that you want people to gain from reading the study? What is the one thing that you want your editors, that you want your readers to get out of the reading experience? What's the key message of your report, the key message of your study? Because this has to be emphasized in the abstract, in the appropriate place, which is, of course, at the end, finishing strong, putting across the main message in the last sentence of that abstract in terms of the structure that we talked about before. Here you go again then. Let's re-emphasize why this is important. Many journals base their decisions just on abstracts. Many authors don't recognize this. Many people write their abstracts in a rush, almost as an afterthought. This, of course, has to be a concise, standalone piece of writing with a very clear message that accurately reflects the full text of your article. Why did you do it? What did you do? Those 4 questions in sequence into the structure of your abstract writing in English, you will make your life much, much, much easier. That's the structure of an academic abstract. Let's now talk about how to write those opening sentences in English. This lady, Hadley Freeman's one of my favorite writers in English, and she taught me, she's a journalist, works for one of the big English newspapers. She taught me in her writing that actually the best way to write is exactly the way that you think. Write down as you think. So one of the best tips I have for writing in another language, in a second language, in English, let's say, is to try to think in English. Try to think about what you want to say in English and then write that down the way that you think. You can edit it later. The best way to write is exactly the way that you think. So try short periods of time each day, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to think and write in English. It will help you to be effective when you communicate, when you edit, when you get down and start writing and editing your own articles. So, other tips that I will pass on for writing effective abstracts are to look at what journals are asking for. Many journals are asking for graphical abstracts, for highlights around pieces of research. So before you sit down and write the 200 or 250 words of the actual abstract, what are the highlights of your study? What are the key take-home messages that we've talked about already in a previous slide? What are the things that you want your readers, your editors, to get out of reading the article? So highlights can help. Many research papers, this is one of the articles that I edit for and I manage as an editor, Disability and Rehabilitation at Taylor and Francis Journal, implications for the journal, the main take-home messages of this particular paper, the main conclusions, the main messages. So this can help as well in writing and editing abstracts. Have the message, have the structure, and think about what the main highlights of the work are, what the main implications of the study are. Make a list, maybe a few bullet points that can help when putting together the English text. Here's another example from a critical care journal called Thorax. It actually asks authors to put in the key messages at the top of the article. And this is a very useful approach for us as editors, for us as authors, to think about when putting together our pieces of writing. What's the key message? What's the key question? What's the bottom line? And here, why read on? Very important for readers and editors. Why should I be interested? Why is this paper going to be interesting for me to read? Why is this going to be something that I'm going to want to spend my time, my valuable time, actually reading? And as editors, as journal managers, this is what we want. We want people to read our journals, to read our magazines. The H index of authors will increase. The impact factor of our journals is going to increase. Here's another example, this time from Respiratory Medicine. Again, this journal's asking authors for 5 or 6 highlights of the article before the abstract proper comes in the writing, in the structure. This is one technique that you can use to get those opening sentences of your abstract proper written and edited, thinking about the key messages, the key take-home messages of the study itself. What are the highlights? What are the implications? Why read on? Here again, you can see these examples from another study. This one is to do with asthma across different geographical regions of the world. So that's writing the initial opening sentences. That's writing the initial sections of an effective English abstract. Let's now talk about some worked examples, some nitty-gritty, some actual how it works sections of abstract writing. And this is another of my favorite writers. This guy is a travel writer, food critic and travel writer. And he taught me another very valuable lesson about writing in English, which is that you don't actually need to be able to write at all to be a good writer. This fellow, Adrian Gill is his name, was so dyslexic that he was actually unable himself to write at a computer or on a notepad. So everything that he published in his long career as a journalist was dictated, was spoken into a dictaphone, into a tape recorder, into a computer, and then transcribed. It goes back to what I was saying before. The best way to write is the way that you think. Think about your writing, speak, talk your writing, and then write it down. Here are some worked examples of putting together abstracts in English. Now, in an abstract, as we've talked about with the structure that we've discussed, the 4 why questions that we talked about in our previous slide, it's then important to come in and look at what the different sections of an English abstract have to do. The first 1 or 2 sentences talk about the aim of the study and the state of the art. The aim of this study is, in this study, the top of the abstract, the first few sentences, tell the reader what the study is going to do. What's the question that the study is going to address? The aim of this study is to. In this study, the first 1 or 2 sentences state the aim of the study, the state of the art. the second sentences, and again, if you cast your mind back to the why questions that we talked about a little bit earlier in this presentation, the second set of sentences tell the reader what the methods were and what the results were. How did you do the study and what did you find? In that second section, those second few sentences in the middle of the abstract itself. And don't worry, there's lots of text, I know, on these slides. There's lots of examples in this presentation. You will get a video. We will give you this presentation. You can look again. You can have a look at the slides as a PDF file, as a PowerPoint file, to hopefully use some of these examples in the future in your own writing. So don't worry about trying to read all of the text on these slides at the moment. The first few sentences of an abstract tell the reader what the question is. The second sentences state the methods and the results. And then the final sentence, as we've talked about, the end of the abstract talks about the conclusions of the study, the most significant outcomes of the study. Don't believe me? Have a look at some other abstracts that you think are well written, that you've used recently, perhaps in your own research, to see if they follow this basic template. It's the 4 why question template, that structure, breaking it down with some worked examples in this section of the presentation. You should be able, as an editor, as a researcher, to go to an abstract, to go to a well-written abstract. So look at articles in Nature, in Science, in those big journals with high impact factors, because there they have professional editors working on the English in the articles. With a colored marker or a colored pen, you can cross off the 4 why questions that we've talked about already in this presentation. They will be there, and they will be there in sequence in the structure of the writing. That's what makes the abstract easy and enjoyable to read, right? The structure makes it easier for readers to follow. You get your message across more effectively. If people read the article, they're going to cite the article at the end of the day. Very important to think about this in the structure, in the format of abstracts in English. Here's an example from my own work, and I'm going to show you a few examples from my own work. This one's about feathers, a journal that actually asks for a structured abstract. Here you can see what we did, how we did it, what we found, and what the conclusions are in that sequence in the abstract itself. Here's another abstract from an article that we published in PLOS One a few years ago. Again, it's about birds, because one of my research areas is to do with ornithology, is to do with birds and anatomy. Again, you can see what we did, how we did it, what we found, and what the conclusions are in these abstracts. And I won't read them out. Again, like you'll get this presentation, you can see the slides later. I hope that the structure of this presentation and the content of this presentation will help you the next time you have to edit or you have to put together an article for yourself. Here's a paper that we published in Scientific Reports just last year. Again, the question, how we addressed the question, what results we got, and why the conclusion of the study is significant. What did we do? How did we do it? What did we find? And what is the conclusion? That's how you put together an effective, easy to read and well-structured academic abstract. This is one of my most recent papers, again from last year, again looking at bird feather shafts from the Journal of Microscopy. And again, I won't repeat the structure because I hope that you're starting to get the idea, but here we have pieces of information appearing in these abstracts in sequence according to the structure of the writing that we've talked about our webinar. This is one of my favorite papers of all time as an editor, and I wanted to show it to you just as a bit of fun, but also to illustrate a few key points. This is a great paper that I edited about 2 years ago, working for one of the biology journals that I work on. It's about these guys from Brazil, these researchers from Brazil. They picked up dead animals from a road going through a rainforest in Brazil, and then they used those road count, those kills, those carcasses, those dead animals that they picked up on the road to perform a big study to look at the ecology of that particular piece of rainforest. A brilliant idea, I thought. Here's some examples of how the title was edited in this particular case study. And I'm going to show you like a huge amount of text. Don't worry about it. The only reason that I show you this text is to illustrate the point that when an English editor works on English that's been written by a non-native speaker, in this case, Brazilian colleagues, you can see how long it is when it's written by a non-native speaker. An editor, an English native speaking editor, will reduce the word count in English, often by up to about a third. Effective written English, short sentences, simple words, keep it simple. This is one of the golden rules, one of the most effective rules that I can give to you for English effective writing. Okay, here is an example. Here is a case for that. English native speakers edit and they cut out words. English effective writing, short sentences and simple words, which brings me on to the final section of our presentation this afternoon, English writing tips and tricks. And Shakespeare, he said in one of his plays that brevity is the soul of wit. Brevity, of course, means short. Keep it short. Keep it simple. Be effective in your written and spoken English communication by keeping it simple. Use those short words, short sentences, limited punctuation. In this respect, by the way, English writing is quite similar to writing in your native language, as I understand. Simple words, simple sentences, limited punctuation. Other languages like Russian, like French, like Spanish, writers are actually taught to be complicated in their academic writing. So we have an advantage, or you have an advantage editing in English, because the skills to be effective, what the sentences feel like, how you create those sentences, it's quite similar, short and simple. Brevity, after all, is the soul of wit, as William Shakespeare once said. And you need to know 3 things before you start to write an academic article. As we've talked about already, these are key to being effective in communication when putting together academic papers. What is your message? Who are your audience? And what's the structure of the writing going to be? What's your message? We've talked about that already. Do you know who your audience is going to be? As an academic writer, that means which journal are you going to send it to? And structure will really help you to be effective editing and writing in English. Now, thinking about messaging for academic papers is quite difficult to do, but here's a simple technique that we use when teaching PhD students in the UK. How are you going to explain your article, the message of your article, to somebody who doesn't know anything about that particular subject, like my grandmother, shown here in this slide, or the bus driver, for example? Keep it simple. It's a key technique in communication, especially for young researchers, to be able to talk about their research topic in simple, easy to understand, easy to communicate ways. And that's the key, actually, to getting articles published. If you're writing academic papers, this is the key to getting them published in leading international journals with high impact factors, because editors, as you know, if you are an editor, are looking for easy to understand messages that are going to be attractive to everybody reading the article. Editors need a message. If editors can't work out what your take-home message is, we say to authors, then they will reject your article. You also have to convince editors that your study is important. Editors, like me, like you, when we read the title and the abstract of an academic paper, we think, ooh, I'm interested. If I'm interested, then my readers are likely to also be interested. That's the key for authors to think about when putting together articles. Is it interesting? Can people work out what the message of the study is? So authors have to check this. They have to prepare to write. They have to think, is the study new and interesting? How does it relate to a hot topic? What's new and challenging? Does the article, for example, to a difficult problem? And so I encourage academic authors, when writing for the first time, when thinking about putting together their articles, before they start to write down the message. Talk about the story of the article in 1 or 2 sentences. The message, the audience, and the structure are the keys to effective academic writing. So targeting your academic work to journals can also be very important for authors, aiming high, choosing appropriately, talking to editors, talking to journal managers, and then dealing with the submission process. These are areas that we find often that academic authors need help with: how to choose a journal, how to understand the difference between different kinds of academic journals, open access or traditional journals, for example, and then how to submit, how to make a pre-submission inquiry, how to talk to an editor before making a submission in order to make sure that the article itself has the highest chance of being successfully accepted in a target journal. So authors, message, audience, and structure. Choose your topic, identify your audience, identify that purpose, and gather those supporting details before starting to write. Most authors sit down and start to write and start hammering away on their computer keyboard before they have a plan, before they know the message, the audience, and the structure for the piece of academic writing. So preparing as an author, starting to write, here's some tricks for success and accessibility. And I've covered these points already, but here they are. Check the original nature of the results. Is your study new and interesting? And how does it relate to a current hot topic? Think about what's new and challenging. Do you provide, as an author, a solution to a difficult problem? And put it down in 1 or 2 sentences before you start to put the article together, before you start to put the abstract together. Your title needs to be effective in English. A good title, we know that a good title of an academic paper that's likely to be highly cited is going to contain the fewest possible words to adequately describe the contents of the article. Keep it short. Titles should be short in English to effectively communicate. What's the main issue? What's the subject? Are you being accurate, unambiguous, specific, and complete? And are you attracting your readers' attention with the title of your article? Very, very, very important. We know that articles with shorter titles tend to get more citations. People want to know the contents of an article. Journals want research highlights. Journals want to attract readers, keep them interested in articles. We want to increase our impact factor as journal editors. And of course, that's done by enhancing readership. Readership translates directly into impact. And the higher the impact factor of a journal, the more like a magazine it's going to behave. So we want to see, as editors, multidisciplinary, impact-focused articles. And of course, that's not just about academic impact. We're also looking for articles that have economic, potentially, and perhaps even more importantly, socio-economic, societal impacts, making a difference to the lives of ordinary people. So let me remind you, as we come towards the end of this presentation today, probably the most important slide that I show in this presentation, in other presentations, the general structure of an academic paper. There are, of course, two sections, and most people, they don't realize this. All that most people read of academic papers is the title and the abstract. Ask yourself, when was the last time you read all the way through an academic paper? The title and the abstract, as you know, are key to communicating the message, getting people interested, and as a journal editor, keeping the readers, getting them into the journal, getting them into reading the article. That's what we want. Interesting, alluring, attractive, enticing academic articles. So this can be done by thinking about distinctiveness. Where's your evidence? Often you have about 10 seconds in writing and in communication before your readers lose interest. So where's the distinctiveness? Where's your evidence? What's your core message for the writing? In English, we are concise and to the point. No short sentences, no unnecessary words, using familiar words, being active in our writing rather than passive. And I can help, I can teach style and punctuation. These are things that can be taught. These are aspects of academic writing that can be learned. We know, of course, that no single writing style fits to everybody. But are you happy with the way that you write in English? And as we've talked about before, good English is simple, plain English. That's really the golden rule of this kind of academic writing, of this kind of academic communication, is at the heart of education. Please, if you can write a sentence, if you can edit a phrase into more simple language, I would encourage you to do that because it will make the writing much more accessible. Here's a few tips, again, and tricks that are interesting for editors. Some common differences in spelling between American English and British English. For example, we're probably quite familiar with some of these. And again, you can take a look at this slide or come and check me out on WeChat, where I post lots of content to do with this kind of thing every day. Favorite though, did you know that Americans and British English spelling actually has a different spelling for the color gray? I didn't know that until I started working professionally as an editor. Here's some tips for practical academic writing. I won't read these out, but they're little jokes to kind of see if you can catch the joke in each of these different phrases, in each of these different sentences. Verbs has to agree with their subjects. Never use a big word when a diminutive one would suffice. Effective tips for academic writing. And actually, one of the most common questions that we get asked in our writing workshops and in our training is, which is better, active versus passive voice in academic writing? Most people are taught, and I was taught too when I was learning English grammar as a student, that you actually write up experimental work using the passive voice. Data were collected and an analysis was performed. But more and more academic journal editors, more and more English language trainers, and more authors are moving towards the position where active voice, active writing is a better way to communicate a message. If you look at the articles published in leading high impact factor journals like Nature, like Science, for example, you will see that most of them are written in the active voice. Editors want this in these journals because it's much easier to communicate. It's much more effective as a communication tool. More and more editors, academic writers, and journals are now actually asking for this active form because this style is more accessible. It's a much more effective way to keep your readers engaged. We did this, our team did this, I did this. And actually, one of the most common English writing mistakes or problems that we find in English text written by non-native speakers is the mixing of active and passive voice in an article. Pick a style, I'm not saying which is correct. I'm just giving you some information about which is often preferred by editors. Pick one and use it consistently throughout the article. Don't mix between the active and the passive voice in a single article, because that's confusing. That will make people find your writing harder to follow. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. This is a summary of what we've talked about in our presentation today. The structure of an effective English abstract, how to write the opening sentences. I've given you a few worked examples, a little bit of discussion about some examples of writing in English, and then finally some tips and tricks for your English writing. If you're gonna produce a film, Alfred Hitchcock once famously said, you need to have three things: the script, and the script. The word film in this quote from Alfred Hitchcock and write in academic paper. What you need is structure, and structure. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation today. I thank you for your time and also for the opportunity to do this. If you have questions, I would like to answer any of those questions now. If you'd like to type them into the chat box. Thank you once again for your time. My name is Gareth Dyke, and I look forward to having more contact with everybody in the future. Thanks again. Okay, so we have some questions. Yes, we will share the PowerPoint. Absolutely. Yes, thank you for that question. The PowerPoint will be available. What are exactly differences between the summary and the abstract for journals? I would say that very often there's no difference between the summary and the abstract in journals. The summary is often just another word that journals use for the abstract. And your second question, the difference between STEM articles and humanities articles. Again, if you drop me a message on WeChat, I can send you some specific examples of the differences, because of course, as you will have noticed, the main examples here in this presentation have been to do with STEM journal publishing. So science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Yeah, like there are differences, but I would say that overall, the messages that you need to get into the abstract or the summary would be the same in any study, any academic study. Could you specify how to write findings and conclusions? And secondly, there's a question, is there a video recording? Yes, there will be a video recording. The guys, the colleagues will provide you all with a video recording. Discussion and conclusion writing. This would be another presentation that I could give, but in general, your discussion is your interpretation. Okay, so in the main body text of the article, your introduction, your methods, your results, and then your discussion is going to talk about what the answer to the question is that your article is addressing. So at the beginning of the paper, in the title, in the abstract, and in the introduction, you talk to people about a question. Your article is a question. Most academic papers are trying to answer a question. So something to do at the beginning of the discussion section is actually to tell the reader what the answer is. But we'll come back to you on that, because there's lots of other things I can say about the structure of academic paper writing. Maybe that can be another presentation that I can give in general in the future. Are the writing skills general? Yes. communication and writing skills are general, and the content, the writing skills that we teach, that I teach, are useful for editors and for anybody writing and communicating in English. Thank you very much for sharing. That's really some nice comments. Thank you guys for the wonderful comments. Can I recommend some useful books for academic writing? Absolutely. Yes, of course. If you connect with me over email or over WeChat, or I can post into our conference WeChat group some examples for recommended textbooks for academic writing. There are lots of them, but you will find that many of them have the same kinds of messages, the same kinds of tricks and techniques. Do I think it's better to write the abstract before or after the paper is finished? I think it's absolutely critical to write your abstract last. Do it at the end. You don't know what the rest of your academic paper is going to be saying. You may know conclusions, the main significance of the study is, put the abstract together at the end, because then you have the rest of the academic paper written. I'm not saying that you can not put down ideas for your abstract, and indeed your message, the main message of your research study, you're going to know that before you start to write, as we've talked about. The 3 things to know before you start to write, of course, are message, audience, the target journal, and the structure, but actually polish and edit and complete your abstract after your paper is finished. Only by seeing many papers can we write a content paper. Yeah, like the best way to improve your academic writing skills is to read lots of other papers. So I always encourage students actually to find, 5 or 6 papers that they really like, that they really use often in their own subject area, in their own field, and look at how those papers are structured. Look at how those papers are put together, because you can copy the structure of other effective writers. Not copy the words, but copy the structure. My opinion is that present tense is better than other tenses in the abstract. Well, it often depends on the journal, because journals have different styles, different subject areas have different styles. But if possible, yes, if possible, it's not better, it's just a more effective way to keep your readers interested. It's more engaging for people to read, "We did this, we performed an experiment," than to read, "An experiment was performed," data were collected. So it's just a more effective way to communicate. So some books tell students to avoid sentences like "this study finds," because study is not an agent, but sentences like, "Yeah, this study finds." No, you would say "the results of this study show," right? The results of this study show, or the outcomes of this study show, because exactly like the study itself is not an agent. Study, analysis, project. I would write something like "the results of this analysis show," or "the results of this study reveal that," so that's the way to structure that sentence. What are the differences amongst different article types? Again, this is something that we can come back to and we can talk about in a lot more detail, but we've talked today, of course, about original academic article writing. Review papers, writing review papers is something quite different, and I could present another entire webinar presentation on how to write a review paper, if that's something that's interesting to people in the future. But yeah, it's very different, writing a review article, very, very different. And one of the key things to do before you write a review paper is talk to editors. Have a journal in mind, have a target journal in mind before you start to write a review paper, because actually it's quite difficult to get review articles published if you don't have an editor interested before you start to write. That's a good trick for all academic writing. Actually talk to editors, write pre-submission inquiries. Should we choose a magazine to publish first and then write the article after that? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Every article you write will be different, tailored to your audience, right? The 3 things to know before you start to write: your message, your structure, and your audience. Yes, yes, yes. Write pre-submission inquiries. Talk to editors. Communicate with editors. Get your target journal organized before you start to write. Yes. Do you think for authors to write the abstract in the final writing? Yes, I think that that is the best way to go. Write the abstract last. Polish and edit your abstract at the end of the writing process. Wow, so thank you so much for all the questions. Thank you so much for all the comments. Thank you once again for joining the presentation today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. I wish you all the best. Good luck for the week, and I hope that we will talk again before too long. Thank you very much once again for the opportunity to do this. Thank you, and have a great day. Have a great afternoon and good evening, everybody. Thank you again.